Hello, I'm Tom Martin, and welcome to another episode of A San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series featuring yours truly, Tom Martin. I'm a longtime journalist. I've produced stories for Diane Sawyer at ABC, Charles Crawls at CBS, and many folks at CNN. And I love asking thought-provoking questions. And my favorite go-to place for that these days is this podcast series featuring my dear friend David Parker, who is the author of two amazing books, Income and Wealth and A San Francisco Conservative, joining us from San Francisco. David, how are you?
I'm fine.
Great to see you. Great to see you.
How are you today, John?
I'm doing very well. I always offer a disclaimer. The bridge behind me is not for sale. That's a black and white photo of the Golden Gate Bridge. And I'm actually in Connecticut, but I left my heart in San Francisco. I thought that's a good line. But anyway, so
I'm in Connecticut now.
Yeah. So things are going well. Thank you. So as we've been discussing recently, you've led many careers. You lead many careers simultaneously. One of them is you've been a lifelong educator. And I was just wondering if in all those decades of teaching public school, there's one child who just comes to mind as like the most difficult, incorrigible young person you've ever worked with.
No.
But
I always say no to questions. But I've had students who have stuck that I cannot get out of my mind. And there was just the opposite. If someone were to ask me, what's the one lesson you take from 40 years of teaching public school, is that don't underestimate people, which is a very Jeffersonian mindset, by the way, because Thomas Jefferson says, you can have faith. People, the average person does think for himself. And democracy is going to be based on every person having the vote. That's why we're a Jeffersonian democracy. Jefferson says, we don't care what your wealth is, if you own property, we don't care what your social status is. This is going to be the first time in history that every person gets men, but today he would have said everybody gets the vote. And we're not asking any questions because people do think for themselves.
Yeah.
And that's, and you know, I started very young teaching and I had a few preconceptions. And boy, those preconceptions were knocked out of me right away.
Yeah. So
I had students who I thought were like losers, and I would talk to their teacher, talk to them a little bit, and says, Mr. Parker, you got that one completely backwards. That guy is probably a genius, and that's why he's messing up all the time.
Yeah.
And very quickly, I realized that human beings are not a dumb species. I mean, we survived. And people may be way off and mixed up at any particular point in their life, and they say the dumbest things, and that includes myself. And then you just straighten them out. Then you straighten them out. You straighten out their parents. You straighten out the students. Now, this is how it really works.
Right.
They remember that and they appreciate it, and people listen. When someone says something that's true, everybody, their antennas go up. They know they just heard something that was true.
Well, what I believe you. I agree with you. I've had that experience myself with, a wide range of humanity, in my life. However, just that last sentence you gave us there, I'm thinking people know what's true, yet, in my opinion, we have millions of people who are saying the last presidential election was stolen. Joe Biden is not really the president. How can people believe that? What do you make of that?
It's pure politics. It's Trumpian, if you want to put a word, Trumpian politics. He's just saying an outrageous thing. Read his book, Negotiating the Art of the Deal. He'll come from a fraudulent position sometimes. and when the other side starts talking seriously, he'll start talking seriously. But until is to get them to the table or to get things to move. So everybody knows, including his vice president, that the election was normal. It wasn't a fraudulent election. So I don't listen to that. I don't listen to the news very much, and never listen to a politician. And this would be a case when they're running for office.
Yeah.
They want to win so badly, they'll say whatever the crowd wants to hear. The crowd doesn't want to hear something, they won't say something, or the other way.
So with that assessment of Donald Trump, should I conclude that you voted for Hillary Clinton?
No, I voted for who's running for Libertarian? It was some person, never heard of him. I voted for that guy.
Really? Oh.
Never heard of the guy.
Okay.
Or Peace and Freedom Party, anybody.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't want to vote for Hillary, and I didn't vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah. So, with speaking about children and how everyone is intelligent, and let's not write anybody off. What are your thoughts about the next upcoming presidential election? Do you think, should we be worried?
No, and that's one reason I write. As a person with substantial wealth, I suppose, I know that people who have money don't care who's in office. That every time there's some business regulation, or every time there's an attempt to tax the rich are laughing. You can't get it from them. You can only tax the middle class worker. And if we want to solve our problems and eliminate our debt, national debt, we need to tax the middle class 50-70% of what they make. And if we put it like that, the middle class are going to say, wait a second, I don't want to be taxed 50 or 70% of what I earn to pay for social programs for people who don't want to work or who are smart enough not to work. So that's one reason I write, to give my position of amoral. Who cares what the government does? Because the rich make money on whatever the government does. Wall Street is there to just take any government law or any regulation, Sarbanes-Oxley, Dodd-Frank, two big, hugely expensive regulations on business. The big companies go, yes, bring it on, because the small companies can't afford it. And we'll just go buy them all up, and we'll have a monopoly corporate state. We'll have 6 companies running the country. So all the big companies are fine. They don't care who's in office and what legislation they're passing. And I know that from personal experience, because I'm there, I'm with them. I'm not just making this up. My thumb is on the pulse of the economy. I know this stuff. So
well, I've read some stories, heard some news accounts of some of the leaders there in Silicon Valley. Again, I don't know whether Elon Musk and Tesla are part of Silicon Valley, but certainly like this Elizabeth Holmes medical research trial, and some of the people with their startup companies, tech companies, and some of them don't sound like the most well-grounded individuals, if I may say so.
Absolutely. But the market handles that really quickly, or handles it eventually. And by having no government protecting consumers from fraudulent business behavior, consumers will wake up. And the old expression, caveat emptor, buyer beware. And consumers have lost that. They're so dependent now. Well, I'm sure the government is watching that company for me. I think I'll go buy stock in that company, then find out it's fraudulent. And nobody's protecting consumers against cryptocurrency. Sounds okay to me. Not me personally. I wouldn't buy that stuff. And the stock and the market is revealing it for what it really is. It's not real. And Holmes and all the fraud. We have laws against fraud.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have attorneys, just ambulance chasers, looking for someone who's been defrauded, because this is money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my position was amoral, and then I started to write because that amoral position began to feel immoral. I should say something, that all my writings are a letter to progressives. You're paying for it. And in fact, you're paying for it more than you think, because it's being paid for by borrowing now. We have a huge 30 trillion national debt, because everything we're paying for, Social Security and Medicare, it's not, the money's not there.
Yeah. I just want to throw in again, if you're joining us midstream here, listening or viewing, this is an episode of A San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series featuring myself, Tom Martin, the journalist asking the questions, and my friend David Parker, who's the author of Income and Wealth and A San Francisco Conservative. And when you're speaking about that kind of compassion, you know, the progressives, and we need to take care of people. What are your thoughts about the homeless? I mean, I understand, I love San Francisco. I haven't been there in a number of years now, but it sounds like there is a homeless problem in San Francisco. All of these wealthy tech workers are, you know, shoving them out. Do we need to build some homeless shelters downtown, or what's the solution?
Well, you can't blame a center that's expanding, the center of creativity for the nation. All the new industry is happening here. So either we stop everything that's new and creative in this country, so we don't have people who are being left out, or people who are being left out better get their act together. And we need to enforce the law. Homeless people are coming to San Francisco because it's a tolerant city. This is the place to come. They get a check, and nobody tells them to keep moving. They're coming here to lay down and die. That's what they're doing. That's what homeless people are doing. They don't want to live anymore, and they don't want to kill themselves. So they just lay down, and the law should be, you can't come here and lay down and die. You have to do what the hobos did in the 30s and the 40s. They went to the outskirts of town and had their campfires and hopped the rails. So if we want to, we should never look at collective solutions. Let's round them up, or let's provide housing for everybody. That's a collective solution. That's socialism. And we should run from any solution that comes from that. You tell each individual homeless person, you can't stay there and clean up that crap on the sidewalk. You go to the outskirts of town, and there's tents there, or there's barracks, or there's an old military base, or there's an old factory, and the city may have taken it over, and there's beds there, and there's food and clothing. But that's where if you want to just lay down and die, you lay down and die at the outskirts of town. There's plenty of abandoned buildings all in every city in the country at the outskirts of town.
Do you think that rounding people up as a group, I mean, somehow that reminds me of, you know, the Japanese, was it right after Pearl Harbor, we rounded them up as a group? Can we do that with the homeless?
And no, that's, you treat individuals as individuals. I am a firm believer of that. I don't like group thinking or group solutions. The New Deal, the war on poverty, the Affordable Care Act, that's group thinking. Let's spend whatever it takes. In fact, we'll have to spend 3 or 4 times what it takes, because there's so much waste, and it's so anti-market that it's inefficient. Don't think like that. Stop thinking like that. That's part of my lesson to progressives. Stop thinking in collective terms. Stop thinking about the community. Life doesn't work that way. Everyone take care of themselves, and everything falls into place. That's pure Adam Smith. And the founding fathers had that in mind. They read Adam Smith. They had that in mind.
If I remember correctly, I mean, that kind of group thinking, which you're opposed to, or seeing people as a group, I mean, that affected your own family history, didn't it? And your grandparents' era? Well,
fascism is taking whole groups of people and getting rid of them. Just when you start thinking in groups and you dehumanize individuals, it's very easy to think about getting rid of them.
Yeah. Do you think, is there any risk of that? I mean, I know you call yourself a San Francisco conservative. Some people see the word conservative and they think about racial discrimination or intolerance and that kind of thing. You're not, I know that's not you. I know you well enough to know that's not you. But should we be concerned about fascism in America?
No. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but just we have laws. We have the 14th Amendment. Everybody has the right to vote. Everybody has the right to property and to their own liberty. It's the 14th Amendment is a affirmation of the Constitution itself. It doesn't even need to be there. It is the Constitution. And the Constitution is saying that. And the Declaration of Independence is saying that we're a nation of individuals. That's what this country is about, a nation of individuals. And don't think collectively. Take care of yourself and everything falls into place better than anything that can be done by design. And once you start thinking in groups, then you have leaders, and pretty soon you have what's called elites. And the Democratic Party, which is progressive, they're losing the working class. They're losing the working class voter because they think they're elitism. Hillary Clinton calls the workers deplorables. Yeah. That's not fascism, but we're working our way there. Yeah, fascism from the left. There it is. That's a good term.
Yeah. Well, speaking of fascism, are you concerned that in recent months we've seen certain, on the state level, some officials being elected, and they say, yes, I agree with Donald Trump. The vote was fixed. There was fraudulent workings of the voting machines and so on. And everyone, most rational people that I know, and including many, I think it went through 60 different court cases, like we find no irregularities, but yet people are being elected who say, absolutely, it was fixed. It's, and their blind allegiance to Donald Trump. It sounds like he will be running again for president. Does that concern you?
No, because that's the kind of natural catastrophe this nation needs. We need to be running scared. If Donald Trump is elected, I myself will feel scared, and that'll maybe make the nation think about our old founding fathers. Maybe they weren't so dumb, because if we don't do what they say, we're going to elect demagogues. That's what happens if you can't rely on individual citizens to solve their own problems and ask government to solve their problems. You're going to have people. That's an opportunity for a strong man to get in power.
Yeah.
And all these politicians who are saying, "Oh yes, because Donald Trump has got me, by the cojones. So I'm going to do whatever he says and say whatever he says. He lies. Well, I'm going to lie." That's a pretty despicable state of affairs.
Yeah. Well, that's
and,
the ultimate.
We need a piece of junk in office, like to shake the nation up.
Yeah. No, interesting way to look at it. The ultimate wake up call.
Yeah, it's a wake up call.
Yeah.
It's letting the nation know that it's really messed up. That if you don't stick to principle, you can get away with it for a while. The New Deal, the war on poverty, great. Oh yes, but that doesn't last. All those negative consequences of government doing things for you catch up, and the huge national debt. Not only 30 trillion national debt, we have 100 trillion of unfunded liabilities that is not being accounted for, and the rich are not paying taxes. And when the government gets close, they send their money offshore. So everything's wrong.
Yeah. Well, with that encapsulation of the state of affairs, I guess my last question for you, we're about out of time, but are you an optimist or a pessimist?
Oh, I'm an optimist, because I know that I don't care what the economy is doing. I don't care what the politicians are saying. I know how to make money, and that is because the market is a force of nature, and you cannot squish the market. Only communism squishes the market, but allow a little freedom, like in China, a whole nation and a continent who people who have never voted in their life, no interest in democracy, not particularly interested in human rights. All they want is a little economic freedom, not a lot, a little economic freedom, and to be with their family. They're happy, they're not protesting. So because that little economic freedom says that the market goes around everything. Yeah. People in China know how to go around everything, and more of the great Chinese industrialists and money people are sending the money out of China. You know things are not too well in China when big money is leaving fast.
Yeah, no, interesting. Well, I think our next conversation should be on China. And I know I know for you, David, if I may, can't speak for you, of course, but I know it's not only about money. I know you've had such a positive influence on the many children you've taught over the years, and your colleagues in your jazz group, and you know, you're a good soul, and that's why I always listen carefully to what you say. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm an individual and lead my life completely as an individual. I don't care what government is doing. That should be. I'm a model for everybody in that sense.
Absolutely.
In that sense.
Absolutely. So, well, on that note, I just want to remind everybody to please visit David's website, which is davidparkeressays.com, and pick up copies of his books, Income and Wealth and A San Francisco Conservative. You can also buy copies of those books on Amazon. So thanks, David. It was great speaking with you.
Thank you too, Tom. See you next time.
Thank you.